Good morning, all. This is Randy Brunson with Centurion Advisory Group here with Sandy LaRue and Jamie Hamilton on this episode of Stewarding Family Wealth with our host, Gwinnett, Business RadioX. Mike and Amanda in the studio with us. So glad that you're listening today. By the way, if you want to know about Centurion Advisory Group, what is it? Centurion AG, Sandy, is that it?
That's it. CenturionAG.com.
Beautiful. Okay, thanks. That's enough about us for the moment. Let's talk about Jamie Hamilton. Jamie Hamilton is the Executive Director of Special Needs School of Gwinnett, and we are going to learn more about Special Needs School of Gwinnett and some just phenomenal opportunities that all of us have as it relates to special needs school. But first, let's just learn about Jamie. Jamie, thank you so much for joining us in the studio this morning.
Absolutely. It's an honor to be here with you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, good. Well, I'm always curious. You and I have talked some, and I know some of your story and some of those kind of things, but for a number of years, you've served as a golf professional. Is that right?
Yes, for about 15 years I worked in the golf industry.
Okay, well, I'm just curious. Tell us, if you don't mind, where did you grow up? What spurred your interest in golf, and then moving into the golf world? And just tell us anything you want to tell us about your story.
Sure. So I was born in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
A brief pit stop here in Atlanta, but Maryland was home. That's where I grew up, and so I played a lot of sports as a kid. But golf was something that my father and I did together. So always enjoyed that. And as I got into high school, some of the other sports kind of fell by the wayside, but golf always stuck with me, and it was something that I really enjoyed. I was fortunate to be pretty good at it, and sort of thought that maybe there was a future in it for me. I wasn't quite good enough to consider playing at a high level. I never quite had that dream, but learned about a college golf program called Professional Golf Management, which is basically the business of golf. And so for me, that seemed like enough golf, but something that I also felt like I could be successful in. So I decided to go that route.
All right, so I was curious about that. I think you've just answered the question, because the PGA Tour has there are several tours within that, development tours, farm teams, if you will. But it sounds as if you chose not to go the starving artist route. You didn't pursue the dream of getting your tour card or anything like that. You just chose early on to go to the business side of golf.
Correct. I mean, I can play golf at a high level and was very successful in high school, but I was also good enough to realize that there is a whole different stratosphere that you have to exist at if you want to chase that dream and play golf professionally. So instead of being a professional golfer, I chose to become a golf professional.
Exactly.
And so, I made that decision early on, and I've had friends that have tried that other route and toiled out there on mini tours for many years. Some succeed, very few do. Right. It's a tough way to make a living, so I was happy with the route that I chose.
Good. Well, and you shared a number of stories. So where did that? You grew up in Maryland, decided early on to pursue the business side of golf. So where did that take you?
Yeah, so initially it took me to Penn State. So Penn State at the time was one of about 12 schools in the country that offered this major. It's in partnership with the PGA of America. So you're basically getting at Penn State, it's a business degree, a recreation-based business degree, and you're doing all of the qualifications on behalf of the PGA of America to become a certified member when you graduate. And so you're doing internships in the summer. Your classes are sort of intertwined with the academic requirements that the PGA has. You have to pass a playing ability test. And so it's actually a pretty unique but pretty demanding major when you factor in the playing, the working, and the educational components of it. And so that was about a 4.5-year journey for me. And every summer we would go out on internships. You have to have 16 months of internships to graduate from the program.
Wow.
And so a couple of 3-month internships your first few years, and then your final is about a 6-month internship, and you don't get to graduate until you've completed all of those. So that took me really all over the East Coast and out of my comfort zone. I grew up playing golf at public golf courses and very sort of blue-collar approach to golf. And the further I went in my work experience, the more outside of that realm I was able to go to some pretty unique places along the way.
So over that college experience, the on the ground training or on the golf course training, if you will, what are 2 or 3 memories that just stand out that were unique or special or that have special meaning to you?
I mean, we have half an hour I could sit here all day and tell stories,
right.
But
okay, 1 or 2 then.
Yeah, I mean, I think really, for me, my last internship was at a club called the National Golf Links of America, and that's in Southampton, New York.
Okay.
And I had never been out there before, and you hear, of course, stories about the Hamptons, and but it's just that world doesn't exist until you actually get to see it for yourself. And very early on in my time there, I met most of the members are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, very successful, very, very wealthy, really great people. They treat you very well, but there is clearly a line between you and them. And then suddenly this young man is in the golf shop, and he's not that much older than I am, and he introduces himself by his first name, and for the first few weeks that I knew him, he was Chase. And then I got curious one day and said, I wonder who this guy is. He's awfully young to be a member at a club like this. And I looked him up online. It turns out he was one of the new hotshots in financial advising and hedge funds in New York. And at the age of about 29 was earning in the neighborhood of $200 million a year. And I still can't really grasp what that means. But from a kid who grew up in, pretty rural Maryland playing golf and a pretty blue-collar approach to meeting someone who makes $200 million a year is, I don't know if your eyes can open quite that wide, or that was a shock to the system, and you sort of learn that there is this other world that exists out there. So, but golf gets, for me, I always enjoyed the fact that golf can connect you with anybody, regardless of their background, their means. I've played very meaningful rounds of golf with billionaires, and I've played very meaningful rounds of golf with people who don't have that luxury. And on the golf course, it's all kind of the same, and that's the beauty of it.
That's true. That's true. Speaking of that experience, you're right. If you're willing to get up and go and do and get outside your comfort zone, you can have some fascinating experiences. And for example, our firm, we're an independent wealth management firm, and the majority of our clients are what I would define as the working rich or the working wealthy. Yes, they've done quite well. They've been diligent in business and life and so on and so forth. But none of our clients have made $200 million in a year. Yeah, that's an entirely different world. That's not a world that we have played in so far. Yeah, we're open to that, but that would be a fascinating experience.
Yeah, you just it's surreal on levels that you can't even describe, and your first moment of opening your eyes and realizing that actually exists, that there are people who have that sort of a life. Yeah. It's a shock to the system for sure. But yeah, like I said, the beauty of golf is the golf club and the golf ball. They don't know who's swinging it, who's in control of it, and whether you got $5 or $500 million, it doesn't make it a lick of difference.
Right. And there are tour players today who, the tour players come from all backgrounds, all over the world, from every country, not every country, but many countries around the world. Some come from significant wealth. Others grew up in a blue-collar environment and just took to golf. They had a natural interest and developed it.
Yeah, no, it levels. It certainly levels the playing field, and natural talent matters, but your work ethic, and how much time you're willing to dedicate yourself to it and practice. And sometimes folks who come from trying backgrounds have that deep down place they can go to, when they face adversity. And so, you do hear of golfers that come from country club backgrounds and wealthy families, but a lot of them come from those pretty trying circumstances and through sheer determination managed to make it.
That's amazing.
And here you talk about that reinforces some of my own experiences, that there's very few things that can outperform simple perseverance and stick-to-itiveness and tenacity. That's the 10,000-hour rule. We probably heard that bandied about in our business lives, where you need to do something for 10,000 hours, just stay at it to be really good at it. But is it 10,000 hours in golf, or more like 50 or 60,000 hours?
Yeah, I think the proper unit of measure is probably golf balls on the range. How many golf balls you're willing to hit over the years?
That's true. So there was that experience, and then you moved on to you served as a golf professional in different parts of the country, right?
Yeah, so out of college, I transitioned that internship into an assistant professional job. So I was at National Golf Links for about 5 years. And in the world of golf, it's very seasonal. So that's a club that is open in the summer months and then closes in the winter. And so myself and most other golf pros up there packed our bags and went to Florida, Arizona. The warm climates is where most people head to. So I went to Jupiter, Florida, worked at a club down there, a Ritz-Carlton private club, for about 5 years. And I had the very good fortune of following the golfers and the warm weather and the money around to some pretty good places for about 5 years. And then had an opportunity to advance in my career and go from an assistant professional to a head golf professional role. And I did so at the Greenbrier Resort in West Virginia. So I moved there in 2010 to start that journey.
Wow. So and you were telling us just before we went on the air that the Greenbrier bills itself as, what did you say?
America's Resort.
America's Resort. Okay. And memory tells me that the Greenbrier, is it Sulphur Springs, West Virginia?
Yeah, White Sulphur Springs, exactly.
West Sulphur Springs. No,
White Sulphur.
White Sulphur.
White Sulphur Springs. Thank you. So, and that's generally in the Appalachians, is that right?
It is. So it's southeastern West Virginia, but yeah, right in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. And so, an absolutely beautiful place. I mean, it is as scenic as you can imagine. West Virginia is one of the most beautiful places you'd ever want to be, and the Greenbrier is an exceptionally beautiful pocket within the state. So, a really great place to be.
So, from a proximity standpoint, cities like Pittsburgh and Baltimore help us out there.
Yeah, so the Greenbrier is about 4 hours away from a lot of things. So sort of Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Washington, Baltimore, Richmond, Charlotte are all within about the 3 to 4 hour range.
Okay.
And so, yeah, the greater Washington area, Pittsburgh, Charlotte, and Richmond were sort of 4 very busy hubs. So a lot of our guests and members, for that matter, either traveled from there or that maybe was home base and they had a second vacation home at the Greenbrier.
All right. Nice. And then now you met your wife Ashley at the Greenbrier. Tell us about that, and you shared some stories about some big events at the Greenbrier. I'm just completely intrigued by it. So talk about some of that.
Yeah, so I came to the Greenbrier in April of 2010, and she joined that fall. So she came on as the director of special events. We were promoting the Greenbrier is a 710-room hotel, a couple thousand guests, a few hundred homes. I mean, it's a major deal, and there's a lot of folks there, so they do a lot of big events associated with that. I came on very much because there was a PGA Tour event that was about to begin. So from a golf standpoint, that we were sort of back on the forefront, and a lot of things were about to happen. So I sort of came on specific to that. She joined to lead all of the other kind of events that happened around the hotel year-round. And so we had met and spent a little time around one another, but the sort of day we sort of got to know each other really was, of all things, at an Evander Holyfield boxing match, which seems kind of odd given he was just fighting or being hit this weekend.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had an Evander Holyfield boxing match that was her first big event. And so it ended very unceremoniously. It didn't go as well as everybody had planned. And so at the end of the night, I was in a tuxedo and she was in a ball gown, and we were the only two people left in that ballroom cleaning up at the very end. And so yeah, I think we may have been the only good thing that came out of that Evander Holyfield fight.
That's a good story. Of course, the Greenbrier, if listeners are not familiar with it, like you said, it's a major resort, conference center, golf course, corporate events, homes, just a very nice.
Yeah, runs the full gamut, and it's been around for a couple hundred years and has been one of the great stalwarts in sort of American hospitality for a couple hundred years, and still holds on to that title today, and a really exceptional place.
Good. Now, you were telling me, I remember one of your stories because the Greenbrier itself, those that live in the area, that participate in the life of the Greenbrier, some things like this, it takes some coins. I mean, it takes some money to participate in that life, right?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's not an inexpensive place to visit or live.
And you told me one time about Christmas, an event around the holidays that served the local community, and what you saw and what you experienced just within a few miles of the Greenbrier location. Would you tell it? What happened? What does the Greenbrier do? What does it look? What did you learn? What did you see?
Sure. So, I mean, West Virginia is an awesome place, but it can be a really depressing place. I mean, it's a state that really, since the coal boom has ended, there are incredible means, and they often live right down the road from poverty on levels that you just can't believe exist today in America. And so every Christmas, the owner, Jim Justice, and the resort would give away $1 million worth of toys to charities and churches and nonprofit groups and folks and families in need, and there's an exceptional amount of need. And so that's it would change year over year, but about 35 or 40,000 individual toys that would be given away. And so that was one of the projects that my wife, or at the time this girl that I was starting to get to know, was running. And so the first year our hotel staff basically would wrap and prepare everything. But as it happened year over year, what it turned into was, if you were a charity that received gifts one year, you would volunteer your time the next to help wrap and sort and prepare gifts for other charities to receive that next year. And so we saw a lot of familiar faces, and charities would participate year over year. And you start to meet some of these folks and learn the causes and the people that they serve, and talk about the families and the children that ultimately receive some of these toys. And I mean, it's inspirational and heartbreaking all at the same time. And I will always remember we had a group from a local church that brought the actual children who received the gifts to help wrap one year. And they wanted to stay at the hotel that night, and so we helped get them a room. And these kids were running around like they were, like it was a castle. This was the most unbelievable thing they had ever seen in their lives. And it was for us too. I mean, it's an exceptional place. But when you see it through the eyes of someone whose life is so different from that, and these were kids that live 15 or 20 minutes away from the resort, and they start telling you about the homes that these kids live in. And it's, I mean, showing you pictures of the places that they live in. Like I said, it's 2010 or 11 or 12, whenever this was, you couldn't fathom that people lived like that.
Right.
And so it made what we were doing, not only with that event, but all the other charitable initiatives and things that the Green Bar championed to give back. It was very clear why that was so important.
Yeah, and probably, I guess it's possible that some of these homes did not have indoor plumbing or running water or those kinds of things.
100%. There was one family whose house was literally a dirt floor. I mean, when I tell you it was probably like a shack, is not an exaggeration. And it's there are people that just live in little corners, and it's not just West Virginia. There's unfortunately a lot of other places like this, who it's literally, the world has moved on and sort of forgotten about some of these places, and people, they have their family and their faith and the things that are important to them, and they live and sustain, but in ways that most of us just can't ever imagine having to go through life. It's really heartbreaking, but you see these people and they come out, and those kids, the smiles on their faces, the joy that they took for getting to be just for a night at a place like that. It also kind of reaffirms all the good stuff that is out there as well. Yeah,
and perhaps those experiences, because I've learned along the way that the three of us sitting here behind microphones, we know that we have options.
Right.
We have options and choices in life. But I have met people, I've had conversations with people, they don't know that they have options. They believe that whatever their life is, and it doesn't mean that they live in a shack in West Virginia on a dirt floor. They could come from any number of circumstances, but sometimes people don't know they have a choice. They don't know they have options. They believe that wherever it is they are and however they've lived, that's the way it has to be.
And that is, for better or for worse, a lot of West Virginia. And I think it's they're very prideful of where they're from, but also they, what they lack in all of these other things, family matters to them more than anything, more than I think even sometimes we claim family is the most important thing in our lives. Well, when that's all that literally all you have, you cling to that, and so you have a child and say, well, gosh, why don't you go away to college, or go move to Morgantown, or go to Richmond, or there's all these opportunities. I'm not leaving my family. That's the only thing that I've ever had. Why on earth would I ever leave? I was born here. I'm going to die here. And if there's not something in your immediate community, then they literally, many of them go through life with very limited opportunities.
Minimal, yeah. You don't even hear. I mean, I hear you say about the dirt floors. You hear about that in other countries like Haiti and South Africa, or certain areas of these other countries. You don't really hear about it much here. So I think, at least for me, there's some ignorance there that you just don't realize, because we're such a country known for our opportunity.
Yeah, and
it's amazing.
It's shocking to know that still exists, and a lot of Appalachia is like that. You go into Kentucky and a lot of other states. It's the unfortunate side of the coal industry is there's been a lot of money made, but it's been made by very few people, and it often goes outside the state. It's money that someone else is taking elsewhere, and as that and industry and timber and some of the things that used to be very prevalent in that part of the country go away, you have towns that are literally just left to rot and turn into ghost towns, and you have a few families that live in them. But it's until you see it, very much like my story in the Hamptons. Until you see it firsthand, you just can't believe that exists. Right. And in only a few years, I've had the opportunity, I guess you would call it, to see both ends of that extreme, and they're equally as shocking.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Sandy, you had a question.
Well, and that just gives you perspective. But yeah, so here you are in West Virginia. So what brought you to Georgia, and what brought you to the special needs school, that program? What brought you here?
So initially, my wife brought me here. So it's kind of funny. For many years, we assumed I would get a golf job and she would follow. In 2019, I made the choice to get out of the golf business, and so I made a transition, was doing some nonprofit development work there in West Virginia. And Ashley had the opportunity to take a golf job down here. She's the tournament director for the Mitsubishi Electric Classic. And so, the tables completely flipped. She had an opportunity. I said, okay, let's do what I managed to convince the folks I was working for up there that I could do it semi-remotely. So I was doing distance work or remote work before it was in vogue. But we made the move down here in late 2019. I had the chance to meet Mike Maloney. Mike is the president of the board at special needs schools. I had but I had known Mike a little bit through the golf space, and we had lunch one day, and he said, well, what have you been doing since golf? And I said, well, nonprofit development work and sort of telling you my stories there. And he said, there's this school that I'm on the board for, and we've actually thought about a position very much like what you have been doing. Would you want to come see the school and learn more about it? And so it just started this opportunity, and I joined April 1st of 2020. So we were under construction. COVID was the new thing. So I literally, my first day, there was no school because it was under construction, and there were no students because we were on remote learning. And so an interesting way to start a tenure at a school for sure, but an absolute blessing. It's a wonderful place. They've been doing great things for decades. I'm just the person that has been lucky enough to get to tell the story and make people aware of it. And nothing I'm doing is special, or I'm not reinventing the wheel. We're just making awareness and letting people know the awesome things that have and will continue to happen there. And we're really lucky that people gravitate to it and want to help. And so it's been an awesome year and a half.
Good. And you and I met about that time. I think it was April of last year of 2020 when we met, and I I was completely impressed. One of the gifts you have is just this gift of everybody. Everybody likes Jamie.
Yep.
Okay. It's part of. Nobody's ever accused me of that, but it's true. This is true, Mike. But everybody, you're just you're personable. People like you. You like people. You get along well with everyone. It's just it's part of what I'm certain worked well for you as a golf professional, because you dealt with some very large personalities during that time.
Yeah, it's when I made the choice to leave golf and go do anything else, this is all I've done professionally, and this has been my career. The skills, the lessons you learn in a business like that, are they going to translate? And I was optimistic that they would, but it turns out, you can substitute golf for just hospitality in general. When you work in the business of taking care of people and creating experiences, you find out that there are a lot of other industries and places that is applicable in. And I've had other friends that have left golf to go sell things, or it can travel pretty well. I've just been really lucky that it's taken me down this path, and the sort of comparison I make is I've always served. I used to serve because people paid for it, whether it was a vacation or a membership or an event. They often paid a lot of money for me to serve on their behalf. I now serve because there are people out there who don't have those means, but still need someone out there advocating on their behalf and creating awareness and providing them the things that maybe they don't have the opportunity to provide for themselves. So I still sort of do the same thing. I've just shifted it into a different direction, and one that, it touches you somewhere that a really good member guest can't quite, get to you. It's, you're doing some really good work, and for people that really deserve it.
Good. And you started in a role of sort of donor development, enhancement, those kinds of things. And earlier this year, you were promoted to, or the board asked you to serve as executive director. Is that right?
Exactly. So my title initially was Director of Community and Donor Engagement. So basically everything outbound fundraising and all the networking and all the things you do to create awareness. And I did that for a year. And despite COVID and all the craziness that it's caused, it also brought a lot of attention and momentum to our school. And so we've continued to grow throughout this really crazy time in the world. And things that I think everyone assumed would happen maybe in 5 years happened in 5 months. And the conversation of, when do we start thinking about expanding and adding more, and what about, enhancing our young adult program, and all the things that were eventually going to happen really fast. And so I was very honored to be asked to take on that executive director role and sort of control the chaos. I'm not, my mom was a teacher, so I've grown up around the world of education, but I'm not an educational expert. We've got great, educational leaders at the school. So from an education standpoint, I'm there to have their back and support them and do, ask them what we need to do to keep moving it forward. And then at a little bit of a higher level, I get to try to do the things that we need to do to keep building on the last 30 years and make sure that we can, still be viable and important and impactful for, for decades to come.
Good. Well, we are just about out of time for this first episode, but for those of you listening, please stay tuned for the second episode, because I'm curious. I want to learn more about Special Needs School of Gwinnett, its history, but in particular, what makes it unique when Gwinnett County Public Schools, who have a history of just national achievement and offer special education, what makes Special Needs School of Gwinnett so special and unique. And in particular, I know we have many business owners that listen to this podcast, okay, and there are some significant tax benefits to supporting Special Needs School of Gwinnett. All right, and to date, I think I've only met one or two people that saw it as their moral responsibility to pay taxes. They are not clients, by the way. They're not clients. Most people prefer to pay less taxes and more taxes. So I want to talk more about how people can do some things tax efficiently and support Special Needs School of Gwinnett. So let's wrap this episode up and jump right into the next one. Folks, this is Randy Brunson with Centurion Advisory Group on Gwinnett. Business RadioX, find us at centurionag.com. Thanks to all of you.
Thank you.